With the holidays creeping up faster than that thing climbing your basement stairs, it's easy to succumb to that chilling weather and just let your facial hair grow. But trust me, no matter how busy you are fighting off the icy grip of cold, dead fingers, our friends at Manscaped have a simple solution. That's the Chairman Pro package. Their Chairman Pro electric razor is armed with not one, but two interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. And believe you me, with the skin-safe 4-blade foil and the skin-safe stubble trimmer, not to mention the Flex Adjust technology, your skin is safe from all kinds of things, not just the thing haunting your basement. But if you're still feeling scared, the Chairman Pro package comes with two holiday bonuses. Manscaped's Power Shave Gel and their Face Shave Soother, all packed with skin-soothing ingredients that hydrate your skin and protect against things like redness, irritation, ingrown hairs, basement demons, razor bumps. Whether you're looking for that perfect holiday gift for the man in your life or just for yourself, no shame, look no further than the Chairman Pro package. Go get yourself 20% off plus free shipping with the code PrettyDark at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PrettyDark at manscaped.com. Thanks to Manscaped, nobody has to fear the holidays.
Who's got my skinny toe? Who's got my skinny toe?
You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
the podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders
and under our beds
and in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
Pretty dark.
So you know how I like to do things in like themes, like by season,
yes,
by atmosphere. I like to really
I do know that about you.
Live in the atmosphere of a scenario,
You
a situation.
really commit. You commit to the bit.
I truly.
But the bit is like
I'm just alone.
Summer or fall.
I'm just alone doing bits for myself and my cats most of the time. But it helps me write. It helps me get in the right, frame of mind. Mm-hmm. It's beneficial. Our artists
it's a
friends
creative thing.
get it.
I understand.
It's a creative
I make fun of you
space.
for it mercilessly,
You have
but
to.
I do understand it.
You have to. So I really wanted to get some specific whiskeys that are some of my favorites that are from Alabama or from literally I have some 10-cup American whiskey and it says it's mountain whiskey.
Aren't we going into the Appalachian region?
Oh, yeah.
Thought
Yes.
so. Okay.
Yes, all up in Appalachia. Mm-hmm. So I'm at the store, I'm checking out, and this cliche of a human being comes in while I'm in there.
You about to stereotype somebody?
Yeah. This dude, he's got just thinning white hair, all slicked back. He's got his overalls, his dirty white t-shirt on underneath, his boots. He's missing some teeth, his scraggly little white, beard. He hadn't shaved in a few days, and he's standing there, and he's got his big old handle of Jim Beam, and he's something else, I think moonshine. And he's sitting there behind me, and he's like, "That Clyde May, that's good stuff. That's good stuff right there." And I was like, "Yeah, it's really, really good." And he was like, I drank up all my whiskey, so I had to come up in town and get some more." And this dude's staring me dead in the eye like he knows what I know. Mm-hmm. He's seeing into my soul. Mm-hmm. And all I could think was, are you the old mountain man from the Tailypo legend? Are you him?
You should have asked him.
Is he the ghost of this man?
You should have just checked in. You should have been like, "Hey,
I felt
you can
blessed.
be real with me."
I felt blessed by the ghosts of Southern folklore. It was incredible.
That would happen to you.
It happened just yesterday.
I don't know whether to be jealous or concerned, but
yeah, I don't know either.
I'm one or the other.
Because I've been hearing a
sure.
lot of stuff in my house, doing all this research. Just a lot of creepy noises. But
me too. I've been hearing all kinds of things.
We're totally
I even
haunted.
had some more flickering of the hallway light.
Yeah, okay.
The faded flickering from like 2 years ago podcast times. So.
I love that. It's cold. We just got through spooky season. It's still spooky season around these parts.
There's still ghosts in my trees.
There's still ghosts everywhere in my
Halloween.
house. And
don't take them down.
I've been burning fires, sipping on some moonshine. I've been having me a blast. So get ready to drink all this up with us, because you guys are listening to That's Pretty Dark. My name is Christian. I'm here with Kaylin.
I am Kaylin, yes.
And all the stars are lining up for us because this episode is perfect. Couldn't be more perfect for the holiday season. For
you keep telling me that, and I really hope you can convince me of it, because the ways that you're describing it do not sound especially
No.
Thanksgiving.
Be thankful, everybody. This is the perfect episode for a food-based holiday.
Okay.
Because it is all about eating some super gross stuff that you shouldn't eat.
Yeah.
And I have enjoyed every second of my research.
It's like an episode of Fear Factor.
It kind of is. In the planning stages of this topic, I was hoping it would be just a tasty morsel of an episode that we could enjoy as a light meal in between the sheer gluttony of Halloween and the overindulgence of Christmas that's still to come. But as usually happens with our content, the history and folklore proved to be much more of an opulent feast than expected. My eyes were a bit too big for my stomach.
All the food puns.
And there was a lot to chew on, but it was all so good, I just couldn't stop myself. And some of the details were a little tough to swallow, but hopefully you can all stomach this one along with us. You guys are never really alone. We're all here together, and none of us are getting up from this table until our plates are clean.
Anybody's childhood trauma being triggered?
Soup's on, y'all. Ready to dig in?
I'm ready to dig in.
Tonight, we are covering 2 stories in one episode. The Tailypo and the Big Toe. And not just because they rhyme. And not just because they're both folk tales that were cultivated specifically in the American South. That's really just more of a happy surprise I discovered in the research. But because these tales have predominantly spread throughout the southeast region of the U.S., and because of the time frame in which they were told and popularized, I would personally consider them staples of Southern Gothic folklore. And if you know me, you know that there are few things I love more than Southern Gothic folklore.
It is your brand.
Both of these stories are branches from the same folklore tree. Like I was kind of describing to Kaylin before the recording, this is the same family lineage.
The same type, fable type.
Yes, the motif contained in both and their basic story structure originate from the same folktale type, which has been passed down by way of oral storytelling tradition for hundreds of years. Most of us know these tales thanks to the modern authors who wrote them down. I grew up with Joanna Galdon's version of the Tailypo and Alvin Schwartz's version of the Big Toe, but these retellings are really just the most well-known to our generation. Before Galdon's was published in 1977 and Schwartz's was published in 81, there were other, much more famous writers who told their own versions of these tales and popularized them for American audiences, including but not limited to Mark Twain, another Southern writer.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and point out here that The Big Toe is actually the very first in Schwartz's collection of scary stories to tell in the dark. And I believe this choice was made because the motif that we'll be discussing at length tonight is one of the most popular tale types to persist to the modern day. Not to mention one of the most versatile, considering variations of this tale have been told across Europe and the US for a very long time. But I'm getting way ahead of myself here. Now, Galdon's and Schwartz's versions of these tales gave me thrills and chills as a kid, as they have done to so many others. But we won't be delving into the backgrounds of these writers tonight, and that's simply because these tales don't belong to them.
They're far older.
Far older, yes.
The writers that brought them to us.
As we have said, these variations are the descendants of a very old tale type, which, according to the Arne Thompson Uther Index, is type 366.
Gotta pull out the Arne Thompson.
And there's so much to this index category that I'm gonna break down, but let's wait until we get to the Big Toe portion of tonight's episode. because how it all pertains to the Tailypo variation isn't readily apparent. It won't be until we cover more of the history.
You're really going to have to guide some of us through, because I do remember seeing the Tailypo on my elementary school bookshelves. I remember the cover art. I remember some of the illustrations, but I'm going to be honest with y'all. All of it has escaped my memory, and what little I know of it is just really that it's a old Southern folktale. That's the only thing I remember from reading it as a kid.
Yeah.
So it didn't stick with me, and maybe I blocked it out perhaps. So I'm excited for you to kind of refresh all of our collective memory, because I can't be the only one that's like, that's familiar, but why?
Yeah, well, I was the same way until a few years ago. It was a fever dream type thing for me. I just remembered a creature with a big fluffy tail. I was like, what is that? It tormented this poor guy to death. Like, what the hell? And so after doing a little bit of research, I found it and bought a copy of the book. And
the same thing happened to you that might be happening to some of our darklings on Instagram this week when they're like, wait, that's familiar.
And I really only knew that Tailypo and the Big Toe were very similar stories. I actually didn't know they were connected through history and folklore. I had no idea until I dug into this research deeper. And I hope I can clarify it. We're going to come full circle in this episode. I was thinking about this. You could literally, like the evolution of man illustration, you could do the same thing with the evolution of motif, like with this specific one, evolution of 366. And you could seriously have each of these folk tales
a whole
lined
timeline,
up one after another, and see exactly how one bleeds into the next one.
I mean, we talk about it a lot with just oral tradition and history in general. It's like such a game of telephone.
Yeah.
Everything is adjusted just slightly for this family or this generation. And for whatever reason, this version is the one that becomes preeminent, and you start to hear this version more. And then some crazy huge detail gets changed somewhere. And then that's how you end up with a toe versus a Tailypo.
Yes, something like that. It's a perfect example of, the interconnectedness of folklore and how it spreads and evolves over time. Now, I did a lot of reading and pulled a lot of information from a few sources online, but our main sources for tonight's episode are, of course, The Tailypo, a ghost story by Joanna Galdone, and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Alvin Schwartz, but also a book called Haunting Experiences, Ghost in Contemporary Folklore, which is from 2007 by Diane Goldstein, and another book called Folk Travelers, Ballads, Tales, and Talk from 1953 by Wilson Hudson.
These sound like good ones.
Those were great.
All around.
They're going to provide a lot more of the cultural context, as well as the a few additional variations that we're going to read and enjoy tonight.
I can already tell that is going to be one of the biggest pieces of our puzzle, is the cultural context. And y'all know I love when that happens.
So to kick things off, before we dig into the details and the history of the Tailypo, allow me to summarize the events of the legend to whet our whistles. A little bit of moonshine. The gist is this. An old man lives alone in the woods with his 3 dogs. Food is scarce, and the man and his dogs are hungry. One night, the man encounters a strange critter with a long, thick tail, resulting in the man severing that tail and eating it. The critter returns later in the night demanding back its tail, usually something along the lines of, Tailypo, Tailypo, give me back my Tailypo, or I'm coming to get my Tailypo. And this typically happens 3 times.
Rule of 3.
And it almost always includes the rhyme, you know and I know, all I want is my Tailypo. The man uses his dogs for protection, but once the critter disposes of each of them, it comes for the man himself.
I didn't know dogs were going to die. I wasn't ready for that at all.
Yep.
My question is, with any sort of animal, even people that are, hunting, gathering for food, etc., the tail is not usually the part that you want to eat, especially not first.
In a lot of different research I've done for different stories, in times of hunger, people have cut the tails off their livestock to eat the tails because they don't want to waste the meat. They're saving the meat for a specific purpose.
I can see it with like a cow.
Yeah.
But like a squirrel tail? Do you want to eat the tail of a squirrel? Not me.
It's always an accident. He doesn't do it on purpose.
Okay.
He tries to kill the creature itself to eat the creature, but all he gets is the tail.
And he eats it anyway.
Yes.
Which, I mean, okay, but...
Depending on the animal, it can have a lot of meat.
Okay.
It's pretty common. It's actually oddly
I'm just
common.
imagining like a squirrel tail.
Yeah, well, this is a
Not
much...
appetizing.
We're going to get to it. This is a much larger creature than a squirrel.
Heard, chef.
This legend is usually set during a particularly hungry time for the woodsman, whether that's because of his advancing age or just because it's winter. Per tradition, the story can take place anywhere in the rural American South, but to folks who consider themselves to be Appalachian, it's highly regarded as Appalachian folklore specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not here to argue with those people and all their guns. I have no problem with it being a mountain tale. I would just also argue that it could happen to any southerner who lives off the land and hunts their own food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know people who live like this a lot of the time, or
Sure.
spend days or weeks at a time at a hunting camp in a cabin in the woods.
Absolutely.
And I have friends who have family who live like this out in the country. And I guarantee you, this tale comes to mind on certain cold, dark nights. And that's part of the beauty of it, because it's also a timeless story. You know, it could have happened 200 years ago. It could also happen next week.
For as long as man's been living off the land.
This is true.
Some more directly than others.
Now, I've referred to the Tailypo folktale as a variation of the ATU 366. And this is true. But there are also an endless number of variations of the Tailypo legend itself. Everyone who writes about it says the same thing, that there are as many variations as there are storytellers.
Mm-hmm.
This is just how folklore works.
Yeah, exactly.
But to speak to this, the woodsman usually has no name, but sometimes he's Old Jake, Bill Smith or Smitty, or Old Man Fletcher. Sometimes he has no food, sometimes he has beans or potatoes, and other times he has a small rabbit. His weapon ranges from a hatchet to a hunting rifle. It can be any season, but most versions claim late autumn or winter. The dogs are either frightened away by the critter, killed by being lured into the swamp by the critter, or eaten by the critter. And the dogs don't always have names, but when they do, they're typically you know, I know, and come to go, calico.
It's sounding a little bit more Cajun.
Hey.
Cajun granny stew.
Kind of wish I thought about that so much while doing this research. I kind of wish we'd at least brought this up and talked about it for a bit.
If only.
The critter itself is either discovered out in the dark, or it sneaks into the cabin through a hole in the floor or wall.
Like a weremole.
Like a weremole, yes.
I have no notes tonight, so my MO is going to be just for bringing up old episodes.
Well, look, I've been trying to reference this stuff in so many episodes, but I've never known how to like talk about it. I'll say like, you know, it's like like the Alvin Schwartz story, or it's like, you know, I mean, we've talked about mummies so much and how this is the same sort of MO. This, you know, it's not the same. It's not a motif, but the whole thing still applies to mummies because it's like you take something from the mummy, the
revenge, the mummy's
to come
revenge.
get it back.
Sure.
I mean, keep talking about courage. Return the slab.
Return the slab. The whole thing is a mummy's revenge.
That is this motif. We just missed it when we were talking about it.
Wow. Okay. All right. I'm in it.
Okay, now you're here. Thank God. All right.
Are you guys with us?
Let's just start over from the top. And you might notice that I'm using the word critter quite a bit.
I did.
This is by choice to really lean into the Southern dialect. Again, Appalachia.
Do you know what? It's really funny that I was typing the Instagram caption earlier and I called it a critter twice and then I changed it to creature because I was like, creature sounds more like ancient folklore, but critter's correct. Objectively.
Always go with your gut. Always.
Yeah, that was my gut instinct. Missed opportunity.
And I'm also intentionally refraining from calling it a Tailypo. Because that's not really what the creature is.
Frankenstein's monster.
Appalachians, cryptid? I don't know. I was tempted to call it a cryptid. But
I think cryptid fits.
Well, I think it technically doesn't. I think it isn't because nobody's ever claimed to see one. There are no Tailypo sightings.
I see, okay.
There are no reports of it actually existing. It's just a folk tale, a folk legend.
Everybody's on the same page about it. This thing doesn't exist. It is a metaphor.
It's a metaphor, right. It's a metaphor about a critter unknown to us humans, which is why people opt to call it a Tailypo, like it's a Pokemon. And it just,
a Pokemon.
That's one of the things it says. So we're like, well, let's just
Gotta catch him all.
It talks about a Tailypo. Hey, look, that's one of them Tailypo.
That's a Tailypo.
We're going to call one of them Tailypo.
A critter is always a creature, but a creature is not always a critter.
Hey, exactly. It's kind of like ghost trains. All ghost trains are dark rides, but not all dark rides are ghost
Yeah.
trains.
Exactly like that.
As a throwback to our Hey Arnold haunted train.
God, the more
episode.
episodes deep we get, the more we just are so self-referential. We're going to get to like episode 200 and we're going to be no longer coherent because we're going to be like, and remember this, and remember, it's just going to be all coded.
Constantly.
Reference to episode 3, minute 58.
No, we just need our own pretty dark motif index.
I mean, hey, if somebody wants to build that for our website, please reach out. I would love to hook you up.
Aaron Mankey made one for lore. His team made one.
Which is
for,
so smart.
For
it's
lore.
so smart.
That also makes sense because it's literal folklore. But it's going to be the Arn Thompson Uther Mankey index.
And then ours is going to be the Arn Thompson Uther Mankey Andrews Mott index.
All right, I'm getting too excited about this. I gotta focus. So to describe this thing for everyone, it's a feline-like critter about the size of a big dog or a mountain lion. It has either red, yellow, or green glowing eyes.
So now I want it as a pet.
And its ears are usually pointed like a bobcat's.
Oh yeah, give me one.
Honestly, it looks a lot like Atlas. My cat
I can
Atlas.
see that, yeah.
He's small, he has dark fur, he's fluffy, he has a big old fluffy tail. And he has those little eyes.
Maybe a little bigger than an Atlas.
Is this not?
I mean, yeah, I do see it. I see
Is that
it.
not my cat?
I see it in the cover art.
It's also nocturnal, and its dark fur is good for night hunting. It has long, sharp claws, which it predominantly uses for attacking its victims.
It still sounds like Atlas.
It does. Very sharp claws. And it also has a long, thick tail. It also speaks human language, which my cat doesn't do, thank God.
Yeah.
But this could be either insanity on the part of the woodsman for eating strange meat, or possibly even telepathy. But for this reason, the speaking of human language, the critter is often described as a demon. Also sounds like Atlas, though. Or as Joanna Galdone calls it, a ghost. But this, the ghost, is likely a holdover from the motif that inspired it. The Galdone version is an oversimplified, shortened retelling for young children. It's meant to be an easy read for kids or for parents to their children. And some of the more harrowing details are left out, although not entirely. But also, the existence of 3 dogs serves the story as a classic rule of 3 situation that provides the formulaic, repetitive structure of the narrative that allows for it to build with each layer, raising that impending doom feeling to the inevitable crescendo of terror. So the critter returns 3 times, and each time the woodsman sicks his dogs after it. Sick 'em, boy! Sick 'em!
Sick 'em.
First, 2 dogs return, then just 1, then none. And when it comes back for the woodsman himself, Galdone has the critter scratch everything to pieces. Very vague. But most tellings have the critter mutilate the woodsman beyond recognition.
And she didn't do that in the children's version.
She did not.
That does set her apart from other pretty dark counterparts.
Yes. In these versions, the critter tears him to pieces so violently it destroys the cabin around him, and the only thing left standing is the chimney, which the Galdone version does, but it's still vague as to how that happens.
Like a swarm of locusts.
And there's usually a tag on the end of the story that describes a whispering voice on the wind that claims to have gotten its Tailypo back.
I mean, it stands to reason, as if you're this critter and you want your tail back and this dude has eaten your tail, you gotta rip him apart to get it back.
So the tale itself may have a timeless quality to it, but many of the details no doubt betray its age, considering how most people used to grow and hunt their own food, especially in the American South. And over time, this was just people who lived in rural areas, and even now it's typically just people who take a certain pride in this kind of off-the-grid living. Again, usually Southerners, country folk. But fundamental human survival is kill what you can and eat what you kill, whatever it is. So, to the vast majority of humanity throughout history, this is a very frightening story. Not to mention its main themes that play on the basic human fears of isolation and hunger.
It becomes almost like a cautionary tale sort of thing. Like,
absolutely,
your food might come back for revenge. Like,
yeah. Well,
in a very literal way.
One of our sources, Diane Goldstein, who wrote Haunting Experiences. She suggests it's a cautionary tale about abusing animals, not abusing animals. It could be also about, if you're anti-hunting.
It's somebody's vegan origin story.
yeah, honestly. So there's a lot to that. And to, speak to that further, the way I see it, there are two ways to go about the Tailypo legend. Either the woodsman hunts it down and takes the tail, thus earning his own demise and justifying the actions of the critter, or the critter preys on him for these purposes, using his isolation and hunger against him. It sneaks into the cabin to entice the poor, starving old man, making it something like a harbinger of death that likes to play with its food before eating it.
I was just going to say, it would have no reason. It could just eat him if it wanted to,
Right.
But it enjoys the cat and mouse. Whether it's the cat or the mouse.
It's a feline,
to say, but it is the predator.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of both, right? Depending on how you look at it. Both are harrowing scenarios. I think the former more perfectly allows for the overarching moral that most people apply to this story, which is don't take something that doesn't belong to you.
And that's valid.
Honestly, it could make for a really great allegory about consent, too, if somebody wanted to rewrite it for that reason. But the latter allows for some straight up existential nightmare fuel about how when death comes for you, it gets you.
No matter what.
So you're correct about, the cautionary tale. What does it mean? That it's just, it means a lot of different stuff. My whole thing is it just depends on how you tell it and your point that you're trying to make. It's
so interesting.
It's a perfect story structure.
It has one thing in common with all of it is inevitability.
Yeah.
Whether it's coming for you or you go after it, the cycle will complete itself.
In some versions, it eats its own tail.
Like an Ouroboros.
Almost like an Ouroboros.
I was going to say Ouroboros earlier.
Can I get an Ouroboros tattoo, but it's a Tailypo?
Yes, I have an Ouroboros tattoo. It's a flower. I think we talked about that recently on air.
I think we've talked about it a few times.
The idea of an Ouroboros is central to a lot of things that I love and appreciate because it's never really over. It's never really done. It's just the death and rebirth. And even death isn't, final in some senses. Or at least that's the hope of some. So,
well, if we learn anything from folklore, it's that the dead can always return.
Which is part of what I love about doing this work that you and I are doing.
Yes.
Is that it always is looking back for those echoes through time.
Sure. Gives me hope that I can too leave my grave one day and torment someone. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. I've always wanted to.
They'll sing songs about you. They'll tell stories about you. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah. Sign me up. I don't know that I necessarily want to be a cryptid. I'd rather be a straight up ghost if given the choice.
Yeah, totally. There's room for both. There's room for both. And interestingly enough, looking at these two different paths to take, the earliest written version of the Tailypo legend is kind of both. See, Tailypo is widely considered to be an African-American folktale that first circulated among Black plantation workers in the antebellum South.
Wow.
Which honestly goes a long way toward explaining its popularity across the southeastern U.S. Of course, it was eventually adopted by Appalachian whites, but this is for an entirely separate reason that will become clear once we've come full circle. And we'll never know who told the first version or when, but the very first written version was penned by none other than a very white man named Joel Chandler Harris. He is the very, very white man who wrote the Uncle Remus stories and popularized the African-American folk hero Brer Rabbit.
I was literally, okay,
for
my God.
Very, very, very white American audiences.
Oh my God. I was going to say it has a sort of Brer Rabbit quality.
Does it not?
There have been 4 times when I've started to say that, and I was like, I'm gonna wait until maybe it gets closer.
Oh man!
Literally, I've wanted to say it.
Again, go with your gut. Just trust yourself.
Gut. I just should have remembered the author's name. That's on me.
So Joel Chandler Harris, as Uncle Remus, published the Brer Rabbit story Tailypo in his 1918 collection of stories called Uncle Remus Returns.
And Brer Rabbit was, as we have talked about on the show, I think, an African-American folktale
Yes.
that was snatched up by so-called Uncle Remus.
We have to cover Song of the South because we have to do a deep dive into Brer Rabbit as Black folk hero. We have to. It's just, it would be...
We have to right
so
some
much.
wrongs, honestly.
We have to right some wrongs.
Yeah.
And we are the two white people to do it.
We are.
In this version of Tailypo, Brer Rabbit is wronged by Mr. Man, who accuses him of eating from his garden, which he denies. The dispute escalates until Mr. Man sicks his 3 dogs after Brer Rabbit: Rambo, Bamboo, and Lambo.
God.
The dogs run him tired until he outsmarts them, and once the coast is clear, Brer Rabbit makes his way out to the swamp where the old witch Mammy Bammy Big Money lives.
Oh dear.
He tells her what happened with Mr. Man, and she proceeds to work a magic spell in her fireplace to help Brother Rabbit get his revenge. And I'm sending this to you to read.
Oh dear.
But don't worry, everyone. I did censor it. I rewrote a lot of things.
Good.
For Kaylin's sake.
Thank you.
And for all of our own sakes.
Thank you for that.
I don't believe in censorship, but when it is overtly racist, I feel like we have to.
That's when it changes. I mean, it's like we just talked about with Wonka.
Yeah.
When
I'm not saying he didn't write things in a horrible way. He did. I'm not trying to whitewash it.
No, it's not about whitewashing it. It's about correcting something objectively wrong and horrifying. Hanging on the wall of the place was the hide of some kind of varmint. I don't know what. It had the head, the feet, and the tail on. She took it down and laid it on the floor, and then got a handful of salt and sprinkled it on the fire, a little at a time, singing, "Rise, skin, rise, open your big red eyes, sharpen your long black claws, and work your big strong jaws." So said, so done, because while the salt was a-snapping and a-cracking in the fire, the varmint hide began to move and stretch itself. Then it began to roll and wallow on the floor, and by the time the salt done all burn up, there it was, big as life and twice as natural, walking round and rubbing against old Mammy Bammy Big Money, for all the world like a great big double-jointed wildcat. Brer Rabbit gave the varmint plenty of room, whenever it came his way. The hide had been hanging up so long and was so hard and stiff that the varmint had some trouble along at first. There were big hard wrinkles here and there, but it wasn't so mighty long before it all limbered up, and the critter got so that it can rack around just as supple as any other critter. By and by, the old witch told Brer Rabbit that he can go home now and rest in peace, 'cause it ain't going to be many long hours before Mr. Man will have all he can tend to without pestering with anybody else.
So that critter, this undead thing, enters the house of Mr. Man, and the whole story takes place as we now know it, with some slight differences. Mr. Man slams a door on the critter's tail, which is what severs it. It wriggles like the tail of a lizard, but it's so big and strong he can't hold it without it whipping him. So he throws it in the fire and buries it in wood and coals. And when the critter comes back with its "you know and I know that all I want is my Tailypo," Mr. Man calls Rambo, Bamboo, and Lambo, who all run off in fear at the sight of this undead varmint, leaving the man alone. The man hides while the critter searches for its tail, which it then smells burning in the fireplace. So it proceeds to dig out its tail from the burning wood and coals and embers, scattering them across the cabin. The fire spreads and burns the place down around Mr. Man, who is burned alive, to the point that next morning, Mammy Bammy, all the way down in the swamp, can smell his charred flesh. It's pretty fucking dark for a kid's story.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
As it was being animated and coming to life, it's almost like taxidermy.
Yeah.
Reanimated. It's that like...
I mean, you made the Frankenstein's creature
I didn't realize
joke.
how close I was. And I was imagining it, you know, like when a rug has like a wrinkle in it.
Yeah.
And it can't quite work itself out. And then it was the stiffness.
I mean, yeah, this provides an explanation of where the creature, the critter came from. Swamp witch.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's a classic Cajun swamp witch situation on our hands.
Yep. You know how that goes. So to provide some context here, as a teenager, Harris worked as an apprentice doing something at the Turnwold plantation in Georgia. He spent a lot of time there listening to stories told by black plantation workers, where he supposedly heard all the songs and folk tales that he later published in the voice of Uncle Remus, doing his goddamnedest to emulate a Deep South black dialect. He was praised for how accurate it was.
God.
So this is why people assume Tailypo was originally an African-American folk tale. And that may very well be true. I'm not saying it isn't. I don't know. But what we do know for a fact is that not all of the Uncle Remus stories came from black storytellers. At least not directly. More on this in a moment.
Okay.
One Appalachian folklorist named Luke Bowserman, who works as a dentist by day, he once said, Tailypo is one of those stories that is hard to trace, partially because it's so widely known and has so many forms. As I've looked over its history, it strikes me that it seems to be a product of the American melting pot, African-American storytelling blended with themes from European folklore. And to quote an article by a Mike Templeton for the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition, there are a great many African-American versions of Tailypo, and the story plays just as much a part of the folklore of African Americans in various parts of the South as it does in Appalachian folk history.
So, kind of like siblings almost. They were growing up these stories in tandem with each other in different areas.
At the same time, kind of.
At the same time.
That was kind of my approach. I didn't want to say like, well, there's, we don't have any proof that it was an African-American folk tale. I don't want to take that away from them. I just think there was a lot of it swirling around.
Yeah. And all it takes, these are not, like, these geographic areas are so close and so related in so many ways.
Yeah.
All it takes is one person traveling and telling the story, be it a black person, be it whomever, telling the story to one other person, and it travels throughout Appalachia. Like, it could come many different...
I hate to be so blunt, but slaves were traded and sold off to different plantations all the time.
Yeah. I mean...
So, stories
This is
spread.
how human stories... go. Like, it only takes one person to tell it in one area for a new, leg of the journey to begin.
So, to highlight some of these quote-unquote African-American versions, there's one I'm sure many of our listeners will recognize. This is the one called Tailypo, with an exclamation point, from 1991 by Jan Wall. The only issue with this one is that Jan Wall is white. What makes it quote-unquote African-American is the illustrations, which were done by a renowned artist, a black man named Will Clay, who depicted the old man in the story as black. This version pulls fewer punches than the Galdone version and ends with the critter straight up eating the old man. And there's a very famous, very talented oral storyteller named Jackie Torrance, who told her own version of Tailypo, featuring a man who, quote, lives in a disgraceful house full of holes. The critter with a 25-foot tail, described in fearful detail, is never again seen after he scares the man into giving back his tail. And the name is not lost on me that Jack Torrance is the protagonist of The Shining. But Jackie Torrance is the storyteller.
I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, it threw me too for a second. There's also Tailypo, a newfangled tall tale from 1996 by Angela Shelf Medeiros. In this story, a black kid named Kenny Ray finds the tail of the critter after it has shed the tail off. The boy's family is poor, so he sells it. And when the critter comes to demand it back, Kenny yells at it to go away. And it does. Good for Kenny.
Yeah, way to go, Kenny.
But those are the ones I could find. So if there's a great many versions... I'd like to know what they are, but those are the ones that
It's interesting that several of those were published in the 90s.
In the 90s, yeah.
So Darklings may have heard you describe the Joanna Galdone version from the 70s and been thinking, that's not the Tailypo that I remember from the 90s on my bookshelf. That's not the one I know, and that explains that.
But other classic versions can be found in things like Old Greasy Beard, Tales from the Cumberland Gap from 1969 by Leonard Roberts, and Haunting Tales from 1996 by Mary Hamilton. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to find Jackie Torrance's version of Tailypo anywhere online, but I did listen to a few others, and she's a lot of fun. She's really great. She actually has a few variations she tells of the same motif, all inspired by classic variations of the ATU 366, one of which is the Big Hairy Toe.
Ah,
And this brings us to the next course of our meal this evening.
here's where the roads merge once more.
So tighten those bibs, folks. It's about to get messy. Well, guys, it's that time of year again. Everyone's online shopping, drinking hot drinks, and looking forward to the next gathering with friends and family. But if you're anything like me, you've been too busy out night hunting for that wily Tailypo to even think about the holidays. He's not gonna get me, no, sir. Not this year. But this comes at a cost, and I don't mean your life or your dog's lives. I'm talking about that mountain man beard and all that scraggly body hair you've neglected in the name of survival. But never fear. Thanks to Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, it's never been more easy to remove all the hairs from your Tailypo. This package is the all-in-one grooming kit featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra to get your chestnuts ready for roasting, of course, and the Weed Whacker 2.0 for trimming those pesky nose and ear hairs to help you always deck your halls in style. Not to mention everything else you need to preserve your most precious of ornaments. The Crop Soother Ball Aftershave Lotion and the Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant to polish up those jingle bells and keep you dashing through the snow. This Performance Package 5.0 Ultra comes with 2 holiday bonuses. That's the Boxers 2.0 in Midnight Bravo and the Shed 2.0 toiletry bag, so you're never unprepared for that figgy pudding. So forget the Tailypo for now and join over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped for all their holiday needs. Use the code PRETTYDARK for 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PRETTYDARK at manscaped.com. Trust me, the Tailypo will still be there when you get back, because it's always there. Always. In Alvin Schwartz's retelling of The Big Toe, a little boy is digging out in the yard one day when he finds a human toe buried in the dirt. He plucks it free and takes it home for dinner. His mother cooks the big toe in their soup, and his father carves the big toe 3 ways.
Yikes.
And they, as a family, eat the big human toe.
That was a really big toe.
That's a Thanksgiving feast.
Yikes.
Right there. That night, something undead comes to the house, looking for its big toe. It calls out for it, demanding its toe back 3 times, much like in the Tailypo. But unlike the Tailypo, however, the whole point of this story is to end in a jump scare, where you lunge at someone out of the quiet stillness and shout, "You've got it!" And that's, that's all part of the fun.
Do you know what I'm thinking of? Thinking of Moody's Point.
Oh, yeah.
It also has strange
Yes.
centeredness on a big toe.
That's true, it does. But Schwartz also graciously provides us with an alternate ending that wraps up something a lot more like Little Red Riding Hood, where the undead corpse enters the house by climbing down the chimney.
Like Santa Claus.
Yeah, but that imagery, it just gives me the shivers.
You don't like those kinds of coming in through the chimney.
It gives me the shivers and the shakes, and I don't like it.
It's that the entity finds a way in even when the doors and the windows are locked.
Right.
Yeah, I know why that bothers you.
Yes. The boy asks what his big eyes are for. To see you through and through, which I took to mean to see through you. What's his big claws for? To scratch up your grave. What's his big mouth for? To swallow you whole. And what are his big teeth for? To chomp your bones. Again, ending with the loud, lunging jump scare. I read somewhere that this jump scare ending is very common for this tale type when the variations originate in either the US or the UK, which is interesting. Diane Goldstein points out in Haunting Experiences that the distinctive comic or surprise punchline is an essential structural feature of children's traditional ghost stories that keeps them from ever being truly frightened because the grabbing and screaming usually dissolves into giggles and laughter.
Yes.
Variations of this particular tale include the hairy toe and the skinny toe, in both of which an old woman finds the toe either in her garden or out in the woods while digging for roots, and she takes it home and cooks it for dinner. With her belly full of toe soup, she gets some good sleeping. Kind of like after the Thanksgiving meal when you under your belt and you sit back on the couch, you recline, you take your nap.
Just can't say I've ever had an impulse to eat a toe that I found.
Have you ever found a toe?
Never
That's
found
really
a toe,
more the question.
but would that I find one.
If you find a toe in the woods,
not eating it.
Would you eat it? Yeah, I don't think I would either. If a toe was found in the woods and no one's around to eat it,
I was going to ask the same thing. I was trying to find it.
Does it?
I was trying to find it.
Does it even exist?
No, is my answer. I hope to God not.
But while she sleeps, the same sort of undead creature comes shambling up to her house, where she lives alone, of course, and demands the toe back 3 times. When she finally admits to eating it, the corpse attacks her. More jump scares. The exception here seems to be Cherny Berg's version of the skinny toe in his Scary Spooky Stories, which you can find YouTube videos of online. They're a lot of fun. It was an old record. In this version, the old woman simply puts the toe in a box and hides it in the back of the closet. Also
not my impulse. I find a toe, I'm just going to leave it where I found it and move on with my life, perhaps even call the authorities.
I think I'd call the police. Always, guys, if you find any body parts out in the woods or in your yard ever at all,
don't touch them.
Just go inside, call the police.
Yeah, that's the end of the story. No jump scares, no nothing.
This particular ending is similar to an English version of the motif told by Joseph Jacobs back in 1890, published in his collection of English fairy tales for children. In this variation, a teeny tiny woman takes a walk to a local graveyard where she finds a teeny tiny bone on a teeny tiny grave. And it's super annoying how teeny tiny everything is. Mm-hmm. She puts the bone in her pocket and takes it home to make soup. But feeling tired after her walk, she puts the bone in the cupboard instead and takes a nap. A voice cries out from the cupboard saying, "Give me back my bone." Frightened, the woman hides under the covers and falls back asleep. This happens 3 times. After which she shouts, "Take it!"
I would
For the love of God, take it!
You can have it. I don't want it anymore. Don't know what possessed me to pick it up in the first place.
Don't know why I brought this bone.
Never read a story in my life. I was not warned appropriately.
Why is there just a bone on top of a grave? Another writer named Diane Good included her own version of this story called My Big Toe in her 1994 book of scary stories and songs, which also makes reference to the hairy toe as well as the Tailypo legend. And here is where I would like to break down the ATU index entries as promised.
Let's hear what other stories, because I have a lot of things in my brain from, like I said, other cartoons.
There's a lot of stuff here. Yeah. This might ping some towers. Mm-hmm. We'll see.
Before we dive in, let's just be clear. This ATU, the index that we're referencing, the Arn Thompson Uther, it's a folktale index. We reference it a lot on That's Pretty Dark. I don't remember if it first came up in one of our Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
It's been a long time, a couple years now. So sometimes when we tell these stories and we find these commonalities among folktale, that's what we go back to, is this folktale index. So that's just a refresher for any Darklings that had forgotten, or anybody that may have missed one of those earlier episodes, because it comes up pretty frequently, but maybe not frequently enough to stick. And I definitely don't remember the motif type or numbers for any of the things that we've talked about. No. But the fact that it exists is just so cool. It's such like an anthropological archive of human folktale.
Well, so, it's a database.
Yeah. But it's so interesting, too, because each entry can be broken down into such specific subcategories, which I guess is what you're going to share with us now.
So the broad category, the ATU 366. This entry is The Man from the Gallows. Before Uther came along, it was just Arn and Thompson. So the AT 366 was The Corpse Claims Its Property. And before Arne and Thompson joined forces, there was just the Thompson Motif Index of Folk Literature. This entry is the E235.4, which is Return from the Dead to Punish Theft of Part of Corpse. This is anything from clothing to jewelry to body parts. But there's also a 235.4.1 and a 4.2 and a 4.3 and so on, because each of these numbers represents its own specific thing that's taken from the corpse.
I see.
1 is a golden arm.
Hey!
We're going to get to all that. 2 is a leg. 3 is a bone, which we've already heard the version with the teeny tiny woman. 4 is a liver, yada, yada, yada. And because I'm a completist, the much more broad category, the E235, is Return from Dead to Punish Indignities to Corpse or Ghost. So the 235.1 is Mocking the Ghost. The 0.2 is Improper Burial. 3 is Raising the Ghost from the Dead. And then the 0.4, as we've said, is Stealing from the Corpse. It just keeps going on from there. So yes, let's begin with the 4.1, the golden arm.
A man with a golden hook for an arm.
Yes, it's very different from the man with the golden hook for an arm.
It's different, but it's similar enough that I'm going to hear it in the tones of all of the Hey Arnold characters.
Alvin Schwartz says,
there are dozens of jump stories, but today only 2 are widely known. One is The Big Toe, which circulates in southeastern United States. The other is The Golden Arm, from which the big toe derives. The Big Toe is an American tale. The Golden Arm, although widely used in the United States, has English and German antecedents. The Grimm brothers reported a version of it early in the 19th century, but the tale predates that period.
And this folktale was a particular favorite of Mark Twain, who famously told it during his live performances and also used it to instruct others in the art of storytelling, much like Jackie Torrance used the big hairy toe in her own instructional storytelling book called Jackie Tales.
It demonstrates the motif very well.
It sure does.
Can't argue that.
And Jackie has her own version of the golden arm that is just delightful to listen to. It's very good.
All these stories are just cousins, aren't they?
Kissing cousins. So remember how I said that not all of the Uncle Remus stories came from Black plantation storytellers? Well, that has everything to do with Mark Twain.
Yeah.
He was so obsessed with the golden arm that he wrote to Joel Chandler Harris and encouraged him to include it in one of his Uncle Remus collections, which he ended up doing during the 1880s, telling a ghost story in his collection of Nights with Uncle Remus. Only he changed it from a golden arm to silver coins, and how very Scrooge-like of him.
Oh, yeah.
This golden arm tale typically centers around 2 characters, one dead and recently buried, and one a grave robber. Sometimes the 2 know each other and sometimes they're strangers. Mark Twain, Joseph Jacobs, and Jackie Torrance made them a husband and wife. It's a very common. That's like the most common, I think, of all the versions. The deceased has a prosthetic golden arm or a realistic, an actual golden arm they were born with. You know, that's more of the fairy tale angle of the whole thing.
Yeah, we all know somebody that was born with a golden arm, don't we?
Sure, yeah. And after being buried with it, the thief digs up the grave and steals the gold. The ghost of the deceased follows the thief and demands it back. And again, most tellings end in a jump scare. Mark Twain had the man bury his wife out in the prairie, but he takes the golden arm home with her ghost in swift pursuit, asking, "Who's got my golden arm?"
Not me.
You know, all the way up, multiple times until she's right next to his bed. Joseph Jacobs slows it down a little, having the wife come to the husband later that night. He tries to assuage her concerns by asking her 3 questions. What have you done with your red cheeks? All withered and wasted away. What have you done with your red lips? All withered and wasted away. What have you done with your golden hair? All withered and wasted away.
Little Red Riding Hood.
Followed by a 4th question. What have you done with your golden arm? You have it!
All the better to eat you with.
It keeps coming up. Others are more demure, more mindful.
Oh, God.
Wilhelm Grimm told a story of a woman who gave birth to a child with one leg made of gold, the other made of diamond.
But he had a time walking.
Well, the child died soon after birth,
Yes.
and the mother kept the legs from being buried with it. The spirit of the child comes to her over 3 nights, asking for its legs back. Distressed by the restlessness of her child's spirit, she returns the legs to the burial box, and the hauntings cease. And now we're really in E235.4.2 territory. The stolen leg. There's another more frightening version from France, where a woman is buried with her golden leg, which was crafted for her after a bad fall that resulted in an amputation. The husband's manservant is the one who digs up her grave to steal her leg, and her restless ghost begins constantly wailing for her golden leg to be returned.
That's not yours. Give it
Prompting
back.
the grave digger to complain to the woman's husband. Talk about restless leg syndrome.
Oh.
Talk about a nagging wife. You know what I mean?
That's where I was afraid you were going when the tone went there at first.
Whoa.
So I wasn't even
buddy.
prepared for your restless legs joke. But you got me with it anyway.
Distracted myself. Where was I? So the husband goes to her first, but he totally dismisses her concerns. What are you going to do? The next day, he sends a maid to see what she wants, but it's the same. I want my leg back. On the 3rd day, he sends the manservant who stole the leg in the first place, and once he arrives, she pulls him down into the grave soil and eats him.
As she should.
She got her revenge.
Sometimes revenge is just as sweet.
Many speculate that this motif of the stolen item originated as a lesson about respecting the dead, and over time became a warning against greed, which makes a lot of sense considering how common a trade grave robbing used to be.
It makes sense that there would be a lot of fables warning humans about the dangers of greed.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you allow the love of money or the lust after money to step between you and your humanity.
I hear it's the root of all evil.
Exactly. Or between you and the humanity of another person.
Yeah.
That's really the point of no return.
Yeah.
That's when you become less human yourself.
Yeah.
So it makes total sense to me why so much folklore and fable warns against greed, and I think our society at large and our late stage capitalism moment could take a lesson from all of these ancient proverbs telling us that sometimes the money ain't all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah.
And there are a few things more important than wealth.
Yeah, when it comes at the cost of, a lapse in human decency or like the desecration of a grave or something.
Yeah. Again, it's just when it severs you from humanity at large, that's the moment when you need a really solid reminder, maybe even 3 times over.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, seriously. I mean, yeah, that's why these folk tales exist, right? That's why folklore exists. It teaches lessons,
to
timeless
warn us against something
lessons, yeah.
that's going to make us less ourselves.
It's amazing how like a cautionary tale told hundreds of years ago is still just as applicable today.
Because humans are human.
We're the same. You know what? We never change.
Through and through.
Through and through. I see you through and through with my big old eyes coming down the chimney, just like Santa Claus. But yeah, grave robbing. Glad nobody does that anymore.
Yeah.
Not as much. Some say the restlessness of the spirit comes from the belief that the dead cannot rest if their remains aren't intact or laid to rest properly.
Personally, I don't think I need it once I'm gone, you know?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's why I'm an organ donor. Like, take what works.
That's a funny
Leave what
joke.
doesn't.
That'd be a funny joke to make right now if I was like, wow, I better remove that organ donor label off my...
Again, just beat you to the punch. I think I'll rest just the same no matter how many of my organs I'm left with. Not that I think anybody would want any of mine anyway at this point.
Yeah.
They're not working so great. Clearly, I'm not a fan of the greedy or the actions that might be taken that, make someone less than human. But I also, if I had anything of worth, I wouldn't want it to be buried with me for all time either.
Yeah, it's true.
That's a different kind of greed, I feel like. You can't take it with you.
Ooh, greed inception.
Yeah. So if it helps somebody else,
where does
I'm
it
okay
begin?
with that.
Where does it end?
I'd like to be connected to my humanity even in my death,
Yeah, wouldn't we all like that?
Mm-hmm.
It's the dream. No one is sure where this originated, of course, but as I've said, variations of the tale have been told across Europe for hundreds of years. Sometimes the stolen item is a golden heart or golden hair or diamond eyes. But sometimes the body part's value is measured by nothing more than what it would simply be in reality: meat.
Ick.
And this brings us to The Man from the Gallows, which is another famous Brothers Grimm story that was summarized by Wilson Hudson in Folk Travelers, which does a fantastic job explaining the difference between stories like The Golden Arm and The Big Toe, distinguishing between avarice and hunger, that is, greed and cannibalism.
Late in the evening, guests come to an old woman. She has nothing left to eat and does not know what to cook for them. She goes to the gallows, where a dead man is hanging, and cuts out his liver. She cooks it for the strangers who eat it up. At midnight, something knocks on the hut, and the woman opens the door. There is a dead man with bald head, without eyes, and with a wound in his body. Where is your hair? The wind has blown it away. Where are your eyes? The ravens have pecked them out. Where is your liver? You have eaten it up, I assume. The jump scare.
Boo! Numerous cannibalistic stories like this exist, including another French tale recounted by Hudson, where two parents dig up a corpse in a graveyard and cut off its leg, which they bring home for their gluttonous daughter to eat. The corpse then crawls to the house and eats the daughter while the parents are out tending to their field.
That gives a whole new meaning to you are what you eat.
Yes, true.
I feel like we've made that joke a couple times, but this might be the best application of them all.
And here is another tale of cannibalism recounted by Hudson.
Just for the record, there's a line. When I say I don't need my organs, that doesn't mean I want to let people eat them.
You hungry? Here, take my liver. I don't need it.
A folktale collected among the Mexican population in Austin, Texas by Miss Soledad Perez and published in the Texas Folklore Society publication for 1951 is a variant of Type 366 and involves cannibalism. A poor woman kills her husband and makes a stew for guests that he has insisted on inviting. One night, months later, she sees a light in the distance and hears the tinkle of a bell. On successive nights, the light draws nearer and the bell rings louder until the woman hears her husband's voice saying, "I have come for my entrails." At last, the light, the bell, and the voice come into the woman's room. Right by the bed, the husband shouts, "I have caught you!" and the woman dies of fright.
Dying of fright, that's a separate thing that I don't get into, but I like those stories, these urban legends where someone, and they died of fright. I think that's so fun.
As a person with chronic anxiety, I don't think it's so fun.
It just takes me back to my childhood, though, of scary stories people tell. You may be asking yourself, why all the eating of the body parts of the people?
I am asking that.
Wilson Hudson points out the temptation to interpret the golden arm or leg as a substitution for a real arm or leg, and hence as a disguise for cannibalism.
Okay, so the cannibalism was the start. It was the way it originated, and then the golden parts became dimming it down.
It does appear to be that way. He suggests that a loved one stealing the appendage could be, quoting, vestigial evidence of a form of cannibalism practiced by relatives to assuage grief. Cannibalism to prevent grief is well known outside of Europe, he says. But Diane Goldstein provides a different explanation for this motif in Haunting Experiences. She says, corpses left hanging on the gibbet were common in medieval Europe. A gruesome, chilling pre-plague image tells of people eating their own children, of the poor in Poland feeding on hanged bodies taken down from the gibbet during a period of famine in the early 14th century.
I think I would rather die, truthfully.
Yeah.
I think I would choose death.
You'd be eaten.
I would.
Yeah.
There's not much meat here. But I think I would rather be eaten than eat.
Take what you can get. Take it all.
I think I would rather be eaten than eat.
It just makes so much sense to me that people desperate enough to eat the corpses of criminals or loved ones would still worry about the spiritual repercussions of whether, or not that person's spirit might be angry with them for doing so. This is a projection of guilt and shame.
Exactly.
That's much easier to deal with than the reality of eating people,
Mm-hmm.
eating human flesh because you have to. You have no choice. So you deal with the fear element versus how disgusting it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're doing what you have to do to survive.
Yikes.
But projecting it onto fear, a ghost story, makes it more palatable.
But you do have that element of guilt. I mean, I would. Like, I don't know as a
Of
human
course
how
you
you
do.
could escape
Of
that
course.
unless you're in a culture that's not presenting it that way. Like you said, if it's like done in a ritual for
Mhm.
grief.
Sure.
But like, I was kind of thinking this earlier too, with the whole it comes back 3 times and it comes back to let you know you've taken something that doesn't belong to you. It's a little bit like Telltale Heart.
Yeah.
You know, there's a Poe-esque element to
Yeah.
this where it's like the heartbeat is behind you in everything you do. It's you're experiencing that guilt on a constant basis. And that's what these things, even though they are very literal in the sense that they're folk tales,
Yeah.
that's still kind of the idea that I'm getting. That's kind of what I'm pulling
Yeah.
from it.
He sort of wrote the inverse of it of like, no, we're gonna stare the shame and the guilt in the face.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the fear element.
Right.
And I could totally see too, like your guilt is so, your shame is so intense that you either like hallucinate or you
Mhm.
have nightmares that the person then visits you
Yeah,
to confront you about
Yeah.
what you've done.
absolutely.
I could see that.
And I can see that having happened. You know what I mean? Like
For
a
sure,
literal
that's what I'm
human
saying.
consuming another human and then having nightmares about the person that they ate.
That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
I can see that being a real thing that was
Mhm.
then told in story
Mm-hmm.
or about someone.
Ugh. We really
know.
traced this one back to a place that I didn't want to go.
It's pretty common. I've read a lot about different famines, and it's pretty common
Yeah.
for people just to kind of eat whoever died last.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Just the Donners.
it really, yeah, that's a perfect example. But there was I believe a particular Russian famine.
Mm-hmm.
When parents would leave to go to work, they'd have to tie up their children in different parts of the house so they wouldn't kill and eat each other.
Yikes.
Like that was a common thing for a while.
That's pretty dark.
The children were so hungry and ravenous that they were basically
Wow.
animals.
Had to separate them.
Yeah. Scary
Good
stuff.
golly gee.
Scary stuff. Scary
All
stuff. Pretty
this
dark.
From
stuff.
like a little fuzzy kitty critter.
Tailypo.
Thanks, Tailypo. Thanks a lot.
Give me back my Tailypo.
That is the definitive Tailypo voice.
Hey. Hey, give me back my Tailypo. You took something that wasn't yours to take. Is it good? Give it back or I'll rip out your stomach
There it
and
is.
take it from you.
And then it just curls up like a cat at your feet. I'll
No,
wait.
in your stomach
Oh,
cavity.
in your
I was gonna say, like, thank you.
Yep.
Um,
Where do you even go from there?
I don't know.
There is no coming back from that. Y'all good? How are you darklings feeling out there tonight?
I hope you're listening to this while eating your
Oh,
Thanksgiving
are
dinner.
you enjoying your Thanksgiving?
Cranberry sauce. Just smear that cranberry sauce on everything.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Hey Darklings, Kaylin here. We know our generation has a surplus of pretty darkness in common, and if there's one thing unpacking our upbringing has taught us, it's just how essential therapy is for shining a flashlight on the darkness in our own lives. I don't know where I'd be without mine. I believe every human can benefit from the perspective of a licensed therapist. Whether you're familiar with your own inner workings or you're just looking for a listening ear, you can give BetterHelp online therapy a try by going to betterhelp.com/prettydark and receive 10% off your first month. I get that online therapy can be tricky, but I've been seeing my therapist online since 2020, and I'm here to tell you that it's absolutely worth it. Getting started is always the hardest part, and BetterHelp makes that easy. You can begin right from your phone or computer in whatever way makes you most comfortable, via good old-fashioned phone calls, video chats, or even messaging, if that's more your style. We enjoy this frightful nostalgia and learning about how it all connects, but Darklings know we're also passionate about healing and growing from what we learn. If you dare to do the same, head to betterhelp.com/prettydark. There you can answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people like us. Plus, you can switch therapists at any time, so you're sure to find the right connection. Millennials are ditching the stigma and owning our mental health. And with BetterHelp, you can build a relationship with a professional all from the comfort of your own home, just how we like it. Visit betterhelp.com/prettydark or choose That's Pretty Dark podcast during sign up and enjoy 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/prettydark.
So yeah, getting pretty dark here. How does all this still continue to relate to children's stories other than the Tailypo and the Big Toe. Goldstein recounts a very common variation of the man from the gallows told by children.
Oh.
Which is one that I've heard before, but cannot remember where I've heard it. I don't know if it was Alvin Schwartz or somebody else. Somebody please tell me where I've heard this before. This one fits squarely into the E235.4.4, and I call it the stolen liver. This consists of a boy being instructed by his mother to go pick up some liver from the butcher. The disobedient boy dawdles and plays all afternoon, and by the time he makes it to the butcher's, the shop is closed. Afraid of his punishment, the boy sneaks into a nearby graveyard, digs up a body, and steals its liver.
That's extreme.
He brings it home to his mother to cook, and the two of them eat it. That night, the boy hears the sound of something coming into the house, and it calls out to him, "I'm on the first step. I'm on the second step.
I've heard this.
I'm on the third step.
I've heard this.
I'm in the hall. I'm at your door.
I've heard this.
I'm opening your door.
Yeah.
I'm in your room. I'm by your dresser. I'm by your window. I'm by your bed. I gotcha!"
Yep. We've all heard versions of that gotcha, the jump scare, like we're talking about. But when you specifically said I'm on the first step,
you were like, oh,
I've heard that
ding, ding,
in
ding.
something.
Light bulb.
I don't know that it had to do with a boy cannibalizing a liver, but
yeah,
I have certainly heard the I'm on the first step. I'm on the
Me
second
too.
step.
I don't know where it came from. I can't place it.
Me either.
But there it is. And then Goldstein uses this story to, provide a little bit more context for, why it's told by children, how it's told by children, and basically, how it pertains to us growing up in the 90s, essentially, which is why I included it.
All these darklings are waiting for us to connect a few more of those
They're like, please explain yourselves.
Why
you
is
criminals,
this on That's Pretty Dark?
You evil, evil people.
This little cautionary tale encompasses a wide range of taboos: grave robbing, cannibalism, lying to mother. In the telling, however, these topics are merely implied or only superficially mentioned. The lack of elaboration and description helps children maintain emotional distance from the genuine horrors that this story encompasses. We see that a lot.
Yes, makes a lot of sense.
The poetic cadence of the corpse's progress up the stairs, as well as the delicious suspense of waiting for the screaming and grabbing at the end, all create verbal art on a level that children never seem to tire of. It's very true.
Mm-hmm.
The story, likewise, enables children to control and deal with fears of the unknown. A child who is really afraid of monsters lurking in the dark after he's gone to bed may cope with this fear a little better if he can control the unknown monster by trapping him in the story matrix and making the monster methodically climb the stairs. The story gives children a way to verbalize their fears in a controlled, predictable manner.
That
why
spoke
we're all here.
To me so deeply.
For sure.
That puts into words perfectly something I've been trying to say for 3 years.
Trapping the monster in the story matrix.
In the story matrix.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
How many times did I come up with these little tricks, these little rules while I'm falling asleep at night? I used to do that thing where it was like, okay, well, if I can't see it, it can't see me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd
we've
close
all
my
been
eyes.
there.
I'd cover my ears. If I can't hear it, it can't hear me. I'd pull the covers up. If I can't feel it, it can't feel me. All that kind of fun stuff. To feel like I was, it was basically a magic spell of protection. It was an apotropaic, magical spell.
Which we were just talking about,
right,
how stories are magic.
Right.
And magic spells. That all tracks, it all connects. That is so, so relevant for kids because stories are magic and stories protect.
If I let it climb up the stairs halfway, but I stop it and I don't let it climb
because
further.
I'm in control.
I'm in control.
When you're the storyteller, you have
if I
power.
appease it by letting it come part of the way, it won't break out of the story matrix. I can control it.
And we know what the rules are in the story.
Yeah.
Wow. And this core concept probably is at the root of a lot of the things that we talk about on That's Pretty Dark.
For sure. Totally.
We are projecting these fears into stories to help ourselves cope with them.
Absolutely.
We say it all the time. This is just a pretty literal application.
Yeah.
I mean, to finish that, there's like a...
Yeah, go ahead and finish it.
Versions of this traditional tale of grave robbing and punishment have been collected by folklorists for decades, primarily from the American South, but also throughout Western Europe. Today, it is perhaps the most common ghost story told by American children.
And I had to just include that to like keep emphasizing that I wasn't bullshitting about like, Southern stories.
Yeah, it's a common
it's
Southern
just true.
thing.
It's a very common thing. But yeah, this is one of the most common stories told by children.
It's so interesting that we cope with it by getting distance from it, by getting closer to it.
Yeah.
It's
really interesting.
It's both.
Yeah.
It's both things. There's this like dance that you do.
Are we going to come across this in Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like, is there going to be an
there's
episode
no way
where
we won't.
this is the premise?
There's no way we won't. I mean,
I know, right?
it's
Like, how is it
still-
not?
It's not monkey's paw, right? We know it's not. There's a distinct element in monkey's paw of be careful what you hope or wish for. In this case, it's something you've done that comes back to haunt you.
If you look into this, you're going to see claims that someone said it is similar to the monkey's paw, but I quickly decided that that was just him reaching.
I think they're two different goals and points, you know?
They have similarities, but they're very
That's
different.
why they're typed differently in the ATU.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole point.
But yeah, this did make me think of the Twisted Claw too, of the whole, oh, he's parking the car. He's
Yes.
walking up the
Yes.
steps. He's approaching the
approaching
door.
the door. Yep.
Yeah.
What version of that did we both hear
I don't know.
is what I want to know.
I don't know.
Like, I'm on the first step. Like, that specific line.
Yeah.
I was like, I've heard this.
It fills me with dread.
Yeah, same. I'm like, I know what's coming. It's going to get me.
It's going to get me. That's how the story ends.
Yeah,
That's
we
what
all know
happens.
it's going to get me.
Oh my God.
I just wish I knew where it came from.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, where have I heard this? So if you guys know of like a specific thing from, back in the good old days,
Please.
let us know.
Or if you remember hearing a version of this, or like if your family had a version of this, because this feels like the type of thing where a family or like a grandparent could make up their own little thing.
Yeah.
Specific to you.
That's fun. In Goldstein, saying that this was collected from the American South, she also emphasizes the big toe and the Tailypo as common variations in the American South, saying that the toe is often cooked in a pot of beans or collard greens, staples of the Southern diet.
Yeah.
And speaking of all of this, we are just about ready to close the gap and complete this disgusting circle. I hope you all saved room for dessert.
I was waiting for it.
Wilson Hudson wrote in his book of folk ballads, tales, and talk from the perspective of being a born and raised Texan, merely indulging his lifelong fascination with folklore. And one of the first stories he recounted that caught my eye was a variation of the Golden Arm that has been told in Texas at least since the 1850s.
In a folktale from Texas, a silver toe is found by an old woman while digging potatoes with her husband. She puts it under her pillow. In the night, something knocks at the door and calls out, "Give me my silver toe. Give me my silver toe." Guess what he says next? "Give me my silver toe."
Silver toe.
Twice the woman says, "I've got no silver toe for you." But at last she opens the door a little and sees something very strange outside. Then follows a series of questions and answers. "What's them great long ears for?" "To hear with." "What's that great long hair for?" "To sweep my grandmother's hall." "What's that great long nose for?" "To smell with." "What's them great long nails for?" "To scratch my grandmother's pots." "What's them great big eyes for?" "To see with." "What's them great big teeth for?" "To bite you, to bite you, to bite you."
This Texas variant of the Golden Arm is the direct ancestor to the Big Toe folktale, with all of its own variants, hairy, skinny, or otherwise. These toes somehow wriggled their way across the Southeast and all the way up to North Carolina, where the variant evolved one last time, blending all that European folklore, African American storytelling, and Native American mythology into one perfect legend.
Y'all aren't going to believe this, but in the story from North Carolina, an old man discovers what seems to be a human toe
What?
among some potatoes that he's roasting.
Gross!
Can you believe that? A human toe? I've never heard anything like that
crazy.
before in my life.
Throw it away.
He leaves it until the last, but eats it too because he's still hungry. Can't argue with that logic.
Yeah.
Then he hears a voice outside asking, "Where's my big toe?" He finds a strange creature called a wampus on his roof. and questions it about its eyes, claws, tail, and teeth. With the last answer, to chew your bones, the wampus jumps down on the old man.
Okay, the wampus is a creature from certain Native American folk legends that was eventually embraced by fearful Appalachian whites who have been convinced of its existence for hundreds of years.
Like the Wendigo.
Yes, like the Wendigo. Reporting sightings and telling of their own encounters, officially making the wampus a cryptid. And the reason this cat-like creature would have a human toe to be eaten at all is because the wampus is something of a were-cat situation. It's a cursed human, usually a woman, who is forced to eternally live a liminal existence between woman and beast.
I understand.
Usually because of something she did wrong, you know?
I relate.
Wrong, quote unquote.
It's interesting that this is really one of the few instances that we've seen now that we are experts on the big toe as a folktale. This is the first time that it's merged and blended in with a known cryptid.
This is the first time it has a real life tie-in.
Exactly.
That existed apart from it.
As real life as a cryptid can be.
Folktale and folklore merged here.
Yes.
But there's so much more to the wampus, history and folklore that we don't really have time to get into tonight, regrettably. But let me at least describe it for you, and you tell me if it sounds familiar. This is a feline-like critter about the size of a mountain lion or a black panther.
Oh, wait.
It has bright, glowing, human-like eyes.
Oh my god.
It's nocturnal, and its dark fur is good for night hunting.
It's Atlas.
It's my cat.
I've been duped.
It's my cat. It has long, sharp claws and teeth, and it also has a long, thick tail.
No way.
Oh, and it speaks human language and is often thought to be a harbinger of doom.
So which came first? The wampus or the Tailypo?
That's a good question. I don't know. No one knows.
That's the most important question right now.
This is why nobody knows, where this stuff came from, how old it actually is.
Yeah. It's all that stuff I was saying earlier about how the geography is just very close together.
It's all so close together.
That's why they say one man's wampus is another man's Tailypo.
I think the most realistic explanation is maybe the Tailypo story did exist, and then that's why the Appalachian white folks were like so eager to take this African-American folktale from them and kind of go, well, we got our wampus. We got our own cat-like creature up here. And then eventually it just overpowered the wampus because very few people know what that is.
Yeah.
But at the time, because no one was popularizing the wampus in fiction, but Joel Chandler Harris popularized the Tailypo. And everyone knew Brer Rabbit. Everyone told those stories or knew those, read those stories. Very, very popular. So it's almost like that just sort of, that wave took over that wampus story. It's either something like that or...
Oh, I'm Team Tailypo, I guess, if I got to pick.
I don't know. I like both.
Pledge your allegiance.
No. I serve no country. I can't.
You mustn't.
Look, they say no man is an island. They've never met me. Okay.
Don't I know
I'm fine. I'm just fine.
Don't I know?
I live with all the wampuses and all the Tailypos, and it's fine. So yeah, either they just merged over time, or one begot the other one. There's really no telling.
Interesting.
No.
I've learned so much.
But I am proud to say we have now completed the circle of folklore, history, and oral storytelling.
The Tailyporoboris.
Close the gap between the Tailypo and the big toe. And now you know, and I know.
And I know.
It's not just because they rhyme.
Damn.
I just really hope that this episode gave everyone an appetite for their big Thanksgiving and Friendsgiving feasts they have coming up. I hope that you tell these stories around the dinner table with your family and friends.
That's what you want to do.
Preferably when you're
These
carving
table topics.
the turkey or leg of lamb or the liverwurst or, whatever you eat this time of year that warms your bellies and your hearts and brings your families that much closer together. Because that's really what the holidays are all about, aren't they? People coming together over food.
Just so long as you're not eating one of your own, I reckon.
If If somebody wants to bring up politics or religion,
If it's getting tense around your Thanksgiving table, we have just equipped each and every Darkling.
feel free to bring up something that they don't want to hear about.
Yeah.
Turn the tables.
Ask your relatives, are you Team Wampus or Team Tailypo?
Would you rather eat a cryptid's tail or a human toe?
Would you rather have a golden leg or a golden arm? And which would you rather have stolen posthumously from your grave?
Yeah.
You guys are going to be fine. Sending you off into your Thanksgiving situations, you're going to be just fine.
I keep saying it's perfect for Thanksgiving. It's perfect for a food-based holiday. You're all welcome. Thank you. Good night. I'm out of here. I'm gone.
Thank you. Thank you, Christian.
I got a fire to go sit in front of. I got whiskey to drink. I've got an episode to edit.
Oh,
I have a Tailypo
don't we all?
to go pet.
You do
Atlas.
have that, indeed.
Got
As
my
do I.
Little Tailypo. I got two of them. One's orange and fat. Orange pumpkin boy.
Less of the folkloric Tailypo.
That's just the sweet boy.
Wow. I'm at a loss.
Me too.
This holiday season, dearest Darklings, don't go digging up any graves,
Yeah.
lest the owner of the items or limbs or organs that you take may come looking for them. And if a little critter of the Appalachian variety decides to make a home amongst you and your loved ones, just let it keep its tail.
Yeah.
Because we all deserve to keep our tails.
That's the thing. If you accidentally remove the tail from this creature, don't eat it.
Whatever you do.
Keep it safe. The people who ended up in these versions, always different variations. The people who ended up living,
Are the
oftentimes,
ones like the lady with the bone who just said, take it back.
just
you can
take
have
it back. You can have it.
As long as it's intact, you'll be okay.
That's really that's the whole like cautionary tale. The whole moral of don't take
It can't
something.
be undone once you've eaten it.
Yeah.
You can't put the toothpaste back in.
That's the other side of that
tube.
coin of don't take it. But if you do,
Don't eat it.
make sure you can give it back. That's what I'm taking away.
Me
That's what I'm
too.
taking away.
I will not be eating any Tailypo tails
Don't do it.
or
Don't do
much
it.
else.
Man, that was fun. I had so much fun with that research. I'm glad we did it.
It has been a minute, you guys. Not that Christian does not enjoy what we do, but it's been a minute since I've heard the joy emanating from his text messages as he's told me what he's researching.
Am I glowing? Can you see?
You are glowing. I was like, what are you even, because for a while there, I didn't even know what our topic was going to be
Yeah, I
for
didn't know
this
either.
episode. Christian had decided kind of
changed.
last minute.
It changed a few times.
And I didn't know what it was going to be. And when he told me, I was like, okay. And then in the ensuing days, he was saying how great the research was and how much fun he was having. And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know it could be that fun. But I'll take your word for it. And here we are.
Well, I'm a morbid mother. That's what I am. So.
We know that too.
This is my favorite stuff. I can't get enough of it. It's one of my favorite episodes we've done since the Green Ribbon, for sure. You know, the way the folklore.
I was gonna liken it to the Green Ribbon, the scary stories to tell in the dark. You know,
everything. And that was
has
Alvin
that kind
Schwartz.
of episodic. Alvin Schwartz as well. It has that kind of episodic, like one-off kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
And
sure.
yet, it is so connected to so much else that has built our culture.
Yeah.
So,
totally.
thank you for sharing.
Thanks for listening.
We went places tonight together that I never imagined we would go. And I'm so glad that all of you Darklings came along.
Yeah.
For the ride.
Thanks for being here, guys. Thanks for spending your holidays with us.
If you celebrate the holidays on this stolen land of ours, we hope that it goes as well as it possibly can. And
Wait
we
a
are
minute.
happy to be in your ears.
We're living in one big folktale. Don't take something that doesn't belong to you.
Wait a second.
Oh my God.
Oh God.
It gives so much credence to the
God.
whole, like, built on an Indian burial ground.
Oh, for sure.
Take their land. They're going to come take your souls.
Said that not too long ago.
I love this stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. That's what keeps me going.
Revenge is imminent.
Well, that's all I've got.
If these stories were up your alley, or even if they weren't, you can find more of us, and especially Christian and his love for folktale and storytelling, on our Patreon at patreon.com/TPD
there's a lot
podcast.
of
We
ghost
would
stories
love
up
to have
there.
your support, and you enable us to tell all kinds of tales, not just Tailypo ones.
Emphasis on the tail.
You can also find us on social media at That's Pretty Dark Podcast on Instagram. We've had a couple people come find our Instagram recently that I guess, found us by other means and have been listening for a while, there was somebody that was like, oh, I can finally see what you look like. Like, I've been listening for forever, and now I know what you look like. I was like, that's so fun. So if you're coming to us from somewhere other than social media, please don't forget to go and follow us.
Sure got faces for podcasting.
On our socials. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, if you want to write in and tell us your favorite folktale, folk legend.
What was coming up the steps one by one to get you in your childhood bed? Please let us know.
Us know. What does it look like?
Because that's going to keep us up at night.
For so many reasons. Yeah, please write us at that'sprettyddarkpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We read every email. It means so much to us.
Thank you so much for all of your support. And we hope that you do enjoy your holidays, however you're spending them.
Yeah, we got Christmas.
We'll be back in your ears for some Christmas magic.
Ooh, the Yuletide season coming around the bend. And we're going to get real dark, spooky Christmas.
You would expect no less of us.
It's going to be a fun time covering a wonderful Christmas horror movie. So, stick around.
No, those things are not mutually exclusive.
No, Christmas is scary. Christmas is... it's dark. Mm-hmm. And I can't wait to do a history of
Christmas. I mean, so many people love the history of Halloween.
That's not what we're doing, but we're going to do eventually.
We'll do it eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Well, guys, I'm on the first step.
I'm on the second step.
I'm on the third step. Leapfrog. How fun. All right. All right, go eat some tails, some toes. Get out of here.
I'm standing next to your bed.
We're gonna get you.
Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark, written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettyddarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.
Who's got my skinny toe? Who's got my skinny toe? You've got it!